Давайте мы начнем уже. Я вижу, что
So why don't we begin? I can see that there are no spare seats in the room, and let us start on time. My name is Evgeny Pismina, and I am a Bloomberg reporter. And I specialize in matters related to economic policies. This is why I was asked to come and moderate a discussion on a topic which is new for Russia. We're talking about strategic audit. I'm really surprised that so many people have come here to listen, because this is somewhat special issue. It is generally assumed that national audit chambers, and they are all formally named in different ways, lately have thought about changing their role, and they would start to pursue more ambitious objectives. They don't only look after how budget is executed, how it is managed. They want to play a role on the policies pursued by the governments, and they want to share their expertise. They want to share their outlook. Well, this may be a good thing to do, generally speaking, but this brings about a host of questions. Just because there are some risks associated with this kind of approach. Whether auditing chambers remain independent in doing so, if they seek to partner up with governments, they may actually lose their independent nature, what they take pride of. Some auditing chambers take pride in the fact that they are politically independent. And this may be fraught with a conflict of interest if they do so. Well, this topic finds little coverage in mass media, and I hope that we will learn most of the answers from this well-represented audience. And let me introduce these beautiful people who have come together here in the middle of winter to discuss strategic auditors at the Gaidar Forum. So they've come together from different countries, from remote countries. They've come to this Cold War. They come to an environment fraught with trade wars. So, well, this may be an indication that auditors are above politics. Let me introduce our guests. If our Russian participants allow me to do so, we have a person from Indonesia, who is the chief of the Auditing Chamber, Republic of Indonesia, Jinigara. Mr. Jinigara. Mark Manikan, who is the Deputy Chief Auditor of Finland. Suhaijin Lun, Director of the Audit Education, Science, Culture Department of the National Auditing Department of China. Christopher Mame, the Executive Director for Strategy, the Federal Auditing Department of the United States of America. And the beautiful Monica Gonzalez, the only lady on this panel, or the Chief of Staff of Ingasai. I believe that everyone knows what Ingasai is. This is the International Association of the Supreme Auditing Authorities. She's a director of the Auditing Authority of Austria. And thank you for this round of applause, and I hope that they will be helpful to our speakers. And of course, I want to introduce Dmitry Zaitsev, an auditor of our auditing chamber in charge of strategic audit. And he will be reforming the auditing chamber, I assume. So let me give the floor to the Russian speaker first, Russian panelist first. Alexei Kudrin, who is not with us today, used to work at the Center for Strategic Research. And he was busy drafting a strategic plan for the coming 6 years. And he is in charge of formulating the strategies which people are struggling with now. So it so happens that he's an auditor, he's the chief of the Russian auditing chamber, and together with his team, he will be actually implementing strategy audit in his department. So, could you tell us, please, what are the opportunities of introducing strategic audit in Russia? Thank you. Whether Russia needs that at all? Thank you. Thank you indeed. I would like to thank other panelists. Well, this is a most interesting panel indeed. And while there are people coming from all over the world for this panel, and the room is full, which is surprising for me. And the agenda is most topical, most relevant to our current challenges. And I will attempt not to pour a lot of details and a lot of stats on the audience, because we may want to stay away from our internal discussions, although these discussions are associated with the terms of reference delineation of risks and responsibilities of auditing chambers. And this is part of the overall international audit agenda. I want to say this. The supreme auditing authorities may be a mirror of changes ongoing in the sphere of public administration. And what is on top of the international agenda? First, we are talking about the growing level of education, digital technologies introduced in all walks of life, and all this changes the system of public administration. A new international agenda is taking shape. First, there used to be New Millennium. Then the United Nations reviewed and approved Sustainable Development Goals for the years 2020. And auditors cannot stay aloof from these changing agendas for national governments. And the national governments place these humanitarian issues in their own context, their own specific goals and objectives. This is why it may be essential for supreme auditing authorities to change and adapt to change. We apply new methods. We used to have financial audit. Now we depart from audits to compliance audit, and then we move further on to new forms of audit, efficiency audit. And efficiency audit has been in place since the middle of last century. We also know that there is a whole set of international standards for efficiency audit. This is a new step, although not all countries and not auditing authorities have come to consistently using this new form of audit. But this is a sine qua non. Efficiency audit is how to assess results achieved by the government based on the actions taken by those governments. This is one slide that you may take a look at. Well, there are some direct results, direct outcomes, and there are some outcomes and outputs of the government actions. So, but what is strategic audit? Strategic audit is the kind of audit which is directly related to goal setting, and it deals with the agenda of governments. The agenda which the public is so interested in. What kind of goals are governments pursuing? People are wondering, and whether those goals conform to the aspirations and expectations of society, of civil community. And of course, this kind of audit is a very good thing. It is essential for society. If you take a look at this simple schematic, then you'll see the final block on this schematic, which is socioeconomic impacts. And this is something which auditors, if they are engaged in strategic audit, should take account of. Strategic audit and of achieving national goals are going to be reviewed by the auditing community at the Moscow in COSAI Congress hosted by Moscow in October of this year. INCOSAI is a huge organization. It has as many membership as large as that of the United Nations. So theme 2 will focus on the role of supreme audit institutions in achieving national goals. Strategic audit, as it is somewhat a debatable concept. And of course, there are different approaches used. We're talking about agenda and strategies pursued by government which need to be audited. The Russian law on the auditing chamber does include a definition of strategic audit. This definition is as follows. This is a kind of audit which is used for the purpose of assessing the risks to achieving national goals. However, when we are discussing strategic audit, we're dealing with risks. And should a supreme audit authority be involved in political discussions or debates, whether it should take any sides with the parliament or with the government or with some other party? And is this a threat to the independent nature and independent posture of the audit authority? There is a concept in the English language which stands as moral hazard. And this is a problem that an auditor is faced with when they get involved in the process of goal setting or attaining national goals. This is a crucial issue, and oftentimes it is described as a dilemma of importance and independence of an auditor. An auditor must be independent. This is the very basis of this concept, and this is what the Parliament expects from an auditor when they appoint an auditor to look after the government. However, this is not a value in itself. It means nothing if such auditor does not produce tangible and meaningful results valuable for society, because assessment is something which is important to the Parliament. We're all in one boat. Legislatures and executive government, executive bodies of government, and we should see how the state complies with their announced agenda announced by the president or government, and how they're moving towards the attainment of those goals. Of course, there are high risks associated with that. Is this risk critical? Yes, on the one hand. However, this should not be an impediment, a hurdle to supreme audit authorities and limit themselves to financial audit only. Well, these elephants are not here by chance. There is one interesting English term which was introduced by the Nobel Prize winner, the 17, Richard Thaler. And This term is nudge. Nudge, and when you are nudged ahead, when you are gently prodded ahead in the right direction. Oh, by the way, elephants are known for their altruistic behavior. So when in Russia we wanted to find an equivalent of that, we came up with the phrase nudge audit. This is something when we nudge public debate or accounts in the right directions, something in a rational way, in an obvious way, something that should be very clear from the outset. In this sense, we're not talking about the audit per se, we're talking about kind of a consultation process. Oh, by the way, this is something very much in use in commercial audit. On the other hand, though, we are faced with risks of getting involved in the political process, and we should be wary about that. We should say that advisory activities should be based on very simple concepts. Independence is one pillar. We should be based on solid data. Our activity should be evidence-based, and this is what government values in our activity. We are more than just an expert. We're a well-substantiated expert. We are experts with a set of argument. We are experts with a set of evidence to support our position. Professionalism is also important. It is equally important because what's important about strategy audit or other audit is expert opinion. Expert opinion should be based on a scientific approach and should be based on evidence and should be based on solid analysis. And finally, we should not be reclusive. We should invite third-party experts to formulate our opinion. So expertise is also important. And this should all be based on some ethical code of our immunity to corruption. These are the important things associated with strategic audit. Let me take few more seconds to discuss the Russian agenda, a strategic audit, because this is not an exercise in theory, in theoretizing. We want to make this a tangible effort, instrumental in public administration. The President has given us very specific instructions, 9 national goals. The government has developed 13 national projects based on that, which all deal with strategies, starting with lifespan all the way to technological breakthroughs. On the one hand, this is the agenda that gives us a spur, but we should also give a good nudge to the government and make use of our analytical capability to give specific recommendations as to public administration, or whether the government national projects conform to the national goals at hand. And we could also immerse that in the international context.
It seems to me that the auditor has to try to find faults, to be skeptic, cynic, and in this case you will work together hand by hand with the government, and in this case you just want to control them. Do you think that there is this risk here, or you can write it down in your ethic code and it will help you out? Well, it's quite an issue, and you have to go step by step. Here there is no direct answer, and in this case, by the way, in the strategy of our auditor chamber is written that we are a strategic partner of the parliament, of the government, and of the president. But the partner, it means that we are not a part of those bodies that we should share our competences, and it seems to me that only practice let us to show, to find this line between this risk management and our independence and our expertise. Thank you very much. Many other countries also work on this problem, and each country follows its own way. Let's ask Mr. Gaidar, you in your huge country, do you control the implementation of the government strategy? And could you change the audit model in Indonesia, please? You have the floor.
You, the honorable participant. It is a great pleasure to me to speak this the 10th Gaidar Forum as a chairman of the Supreme Audit Institution of the Republic of Indonesia. We certainly have challenged auditing Indonesia public institution in our country of 255 million people, stretched across more than 17,000 tropical island, with an economic that has been experiencing steady and strong growth over the past 15 years. There are increasing public and private sector demand to sustain Indonesian growth and opportunity, while simultaneously rising transparency and accountability, in other words, continuing to build trust. Both public and private players recognize, however, the sustainability and growth require good cooperation. The goal of the Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia is to deliver measurable and sustainable value for as many sectors of society as we can. The Indonesian Constitution, as well as other supporting law, detail the independence of the Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia, giving it wide scope and power to evaluate the performance of all layers of government in Indonesia, numbering over 2,000 audit entities, with a staff of over 7,000, including over 4,000 auditors. We allocate resources to expand e-auditing and performance and special audit. We seek to expand audit coverage, but the main goal remains to ensure that our 1-year and 5-year audit strategies meet emerging requirements and deliver solid support in achieving national strategic objective. The Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia is fully independent and on equal level with the other top branches of the Indonesian government, notably the executive and the parliament. We align audit objective, especially with national strategic goal of the executive and parliamentary branches. Occasionally, we receive requests for special audit and targeted opinion from any the main government institution. We follow a scheduled report regime with audit regularly conducted and written report formally presented to audit entities, parliament, the executive, and the other interested parties. Follow-ups on recommendation give a good indication of success, showing the direction of the improvement and helping to keep strategic plan on course. National strategic direction is set within the Indonesian National Development Priority Program by the executive, supported and evaluated by the parliament, with support by the numerous regulators who guide the main economic levers. As input for the executive strategic planning, the Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia produced a 5-year summary of audit report, which is submitted to the Parliament as well as to the executive, notably the Minister of National Development Planning. The Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia has our own long-term strategic plans spanning 5-year period, which are agreed upon at the board level and which are in alignment with the national 5-year plans, which are published and previous year. Indonesian Supreme Audit Institution vision is promoting state finance management in achieving national objective by conducting high quality and beneficial audit. Has a clear link with the achievement of the government national strategic goal. Thus, we see a community of purpose, a general common future vision, where we as a Supreme Audit Institution are moving along with the country, the government, and the people. I believe that it's important to keep the goals and the mission front and center. The Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia is recognized in the strategic and essential role as overseer and guard. And in this role, it keeps all nation partners focused and secure in fulfilling their mission. And as government bodies, their mission are to deliver results and meet stakeholder expectations. Every year, however, we do uncover probable irregularities that result in a fresh 30 prosecution, and several of our decisions are challenged before the court. It is our success rate in this challenge that support decision maker throughout all the layer of government to resist temptation to take shortcut or to divert the country from achieving the state target, and if I may say, that this helped Indonesia in achieving its historic destiny. The Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia is regularly and in consultation with the various committee of parliament, with minister and the executive. This discussion seek way to achieve objective while everyone remain aware of the oversight and guardian role we have. In addition, there are other financial monitoring bodies in Indonesia as well as the Corruption Eradication Commission, all of whom are monitoring and bringing irregularities and crime to light. From our experience in Indonesia, we see that short-term political trade-off must not stop the public momentum for lasting and equitable prosperity. This strategic plan and mission and recognition of stakeholder expectation will internally strengthen our organization, resulting in a strengthened Indonesia. I think that everyone accepts that the result of independent public sector audit, or just knowing that this audit will happen, ultimately spread of constructive influence, a calm and profound trust. This will occur for all stakeholders across all sectors of the Indonesian community, in the culture sector, private sector, environmental sector, industrial sector, and social sector, like an intangible asset. This intangible value of trust is hard to measure, but it is somehow felt when traveling across the beautiful island of Indonesia. I thank you for your kind attention, and I do invite you to visit Indonesia if you have not yet had the opportunity. Good afternoon.
Эти теплые
So, very warm applauses. I think they have to do with your beautiful report and also with the fact that here in winter we want a lot to go to warm places. Mr. Gaidar, I've got one question. You mentioned that you prepare recommendation for government. Your recommendation, does the government listen to your recommendation? If you recommend, for example, something to the government and they do it, can you put an example of such a case?
We give a recommendation, and then the government must follow our recommendation, because we have one law. If the government or the institution that doesn't take the recommendation, our recommendation, we can take it to the court. But we don't use the law until now.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manika, please tell us, in Finland, do you have a success case, success story? Do auditors in Finlandia have those new competences? We would like to see that it's really useful, seeing some examples, good examples.
Thank you. I will share our experiences and let's say our history in this topic. I would say started 2007. And that was the time when we started to consider how relevant we are for the Finnish society, and we challenged our, let's say, previous approaches. Just to give background, our office is quite small, 140. Also Finland is small, but even taking account the Finnish size, our office is quite small, which means that it's not relevant how much we are doing, but actually what we are doing, so how we select what we are doing. And what independency means for us. We are not under the parliament, but we are in connection with the parliament, which means in practice that only our Auditor General is able to give us any tasks, and that we can publish freely, and also that we can use media as a tool to get our message through. There was a good question about proposals, and I must say that media is actually quite an important tool for us to get attention for our recommendations. 2007, we decided that we have 4 audit, let's say, types. And the additional 4th was fiscal policy audit. So we challenged the government's basis for fiscal policy, and that was something new for us. In addition, our audit office is an independent fiscal institution under the EU legislation, but I won't go through in details on that side. And then, in addition, we are monitoring the policy party funding. So all the political parties and candidates for the parliament, local elections, they have to report the funding for us, and we publish the information. So how we try to be more relevant? In the Finnish context, government set up a program for the election cycle. In practice, it's usually the 4 years. So we try to select topics which are relevant in the government program, or which are not included, but relevant. And we try to propose proposals timely in practice so that they would be available when draft government program is prepared for the next election cycle. And then in the end of the election cycle, we give a 4 years evaluation of the fiscal policy to the parliament, which is challenging the government's policy for the 4 years' time. Political objectives are, of course, not auditable. They are not under our mandate. But we have a mandate to evaluate the programs and tools and means that are used. And I will give you a few examples how this is done and which are, how to say, the limit cases for us in our environment. In the previous session, we were discussing a lot, here in this Whitehall, about the government debt. And in EU context, government debt maximum level is defined for 60%. So it's easy for us to challenge that whether government is following that rule or not. But we don't have any rule for contingent liabilities, government guarantees. And we consider that it's the political power which defines the level of government guarantees. It's not our task. But we consider that it's our task to challenge whether government is actually managing that risk. And if you see the figure from 2005 up to 2018, you see, let's say, a slight increase. And this is something that we published in our 4 years annual report to Finnish Parliament. And the English version of that report, I think, will be published in our webpage tomorrow, I think. And then one case about clean solutions. One risk for clean solutions or spending in green solutions is that it's politically easy to spend money for green solutions. And clean solutions is one of the 5 strategic priorities in the Finnish government program. And there was additional spending for that goal. And we evaluated whether there are any differences how this money is spent compared to previous, let's say, similar spendings. And we didn't find any differences. So then one can ask whether this policy is actually effectively implemented. And these kind of cases, you can ask what's our additional value, because the government has the same access for the information than we do, if they have the will. But we consider that in our context, we can add transparency to the government and also to the public by taking account and reporting this kind of topics. And then a little bit older case, public procurements. Our traditional approach was to challenge administration whether they are following, the compliance rules in public procurements. And they were afraid that they will get negative feedback from the auditor. So that kind of behavior in administration is limiting, let's say, flexibility. And there's lost opportunities. And at the same time, and this was our approach, the government had a goal that 5% of the public procurement spending should be used for innovative, let's say, cases. So our actions were actually not supporting the government's goal, but the other way around. So then we changed our challenge, and challenges our approach, and we started to evaluate whether this rule or objective 5% for innovative spending, how it's managed. And we realized that there's actually no way to define what's innovative spending for public procurements, and there's no system to manage that objective. And that was the way how we considered that we were adding, let's say, additional value. And our ultimate goal is to promote trust in the Finnish society and to keep the Finnish citizens pay taxes happily. And that's the way how we challenge our task. Thank you.
Вот видите.
Now I can see our citizens are also anxious to pay taxes. Well, the taxes are going up, so they should be increasingly happy. Oh, Mr. Manning, so tell me, have you already mastered these new competences in Finland? Can you say that you already switched over to strategic audit?
It would be nice. It would be nice to say in this audience that yes, but to be honest, I mean, definitely not. I mean, it has been a long process, And it's totally different competencies that you need when you have to challenge, let's say, complex issues and systematic challenges.
Но вы можете дать совет вот Дмитрию?
Can you give a piece of advice to Dmitry? That golden key, like in Pinocchio, how to open the door? What's the golden key of strategic audit?
Pinocchio, sorry, yes, it's Russian version, Buratino.
Yes, Pinocchio. I mentioned Pinocchio.
The position that I would give any advice or something, but it takes time. And we were setting our, let's say, goals and objectives I mean, they were too tight. We didn't realize how much time it needs, and we did not realize how much you have to develop your own competencies. That was a surprise for us. We were considering that if you have to be a financial auditor quite fast, you can learn a new way of thinking, but that was not the case.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Marnik, in your presentation, which I looked over his shoulder, had a picture of iceberg. An iceberg was pictured there. And in the United States, if we talk about budget, we can draw an analogy with a volcano, if Mr. Meme had this presentation, because the United States is not living through an easiest time in terms of the budget execution. And there are some heated debates going on between the President and Congress over the budget. It would be interesting to know about the role played by the Government Accountability Office, and what do you think about transition to strategic audit? And is it a useful exercise at all? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. That it's a delight and an honor to be here with my colleagues on this panel. And I am well aware also of the history of the Gaidar Forum, and so it's a real honor to be here and participate in the forum. For us, and when we think about strategic issues, or strategic audit rather, the focus that we take on this is think of everything that you consider important that you want government to achieve or contribute to. And many of these issues have been on the agenda over the last couple of days. We've been discussing, there have been panels on education policy. There have been panels on smart cities. There have been panels on AI and machine learning. There's a panel going on at the same time on strategic development goals. The point is that think of anything that you care about, and I'm willing to bet that the solution to that is not going to be a single ministry or a single program within ministry just working on its own in isolation, and therefore the problem will go away. Rather, far more common, I would suggest, is that the solution to any big problem, certainly anything that we really care about, is going to be a variety of different programs working together across organizational lines, often across different levels of government, of national, regional, and local, often across different sectors of the public sector, civil society, and the private sector. And so the key to success will be coordination and how organizations work together across their barriers. And so the golden key that you are asking for, that, and again, my compliments to Dmitry and his colleagues, that the thinking that they are doing on strategic audit to prepare all of us for the meeting that's taking place later this year here in Moscow is really taking us in a new direction internationally. And so great credit to him and the accounts chamber. But the golden key, as it were, is for us in the audit world to change the unit of analysis. Is that very often our audits have focused on compliance with rules and regulations, which is important. Was the law followed by government? Or it will focus on the performance of an individual program. Again, all of that is valuable. Or on finances, as Marco mentioned, again, valuable. But increasingly what we find, and this is the heart of strategic audit, is that we need to be prepared and have audit methodologies that are as sophisticated as the governance approaches the government is using to address complex issues. And that is that we need to be able to have audit approaches that look across individual programs and ministries. And so what does that entail? It entails a lot, and this is what, under Dimitri's and the Accounts Chamber's leadership, we will determine more in this coming year. But it entails at least a couple of things. First, it entails a requirement that we adopt what's often called a whole-of-government perspective to audit. That is, being able to look at the cross-cutting approaches or cross-cutting different types of programs that are involved in addressing complex and big policy issues. It entails, second, looking at what's often referred to as policy coherence. That is there consistency or contradiction or tensions across different policies? And so, for example, in many parts of the world, certainly at home in the United States, attempts to deal with climate change can be running into conflicts of attempts to deal with economic development. And how you resolve those is something that can be audited. Not so much the solution, because that's a political issue that audit agencies don't have a brief on, but the process that's used in order to resolve these policy issues is one that's very important. Third, we can look at the principles and practices of the Sustainable Development Goals number 16. And the SDG 16 dealt with peace, justice, and strong institutions. And just a minute on why that's so important. It's important for two reasons. One is that under the Millennium Development Goals, which took us to from 1990 to 2015, under the MDGs, there wasn't a focus, there wasn't a separate goal on good governance, on how we're going to implement these. It was understood we needed to implement the MDGs, but it wasn't part of the 2030 agenda. And so when the heads of state got together in 2015 at the United Nations, from Russia, from the United States, from over 200 other different countries around the world, and adopted the global agenda, they put in the global agenda a goal dealing with good governance. And so it's not an afterthought. It's not something good to do. It was seen as inextricably linked to achieving everything big and important that we as in our societies need to achieve. Notwithstanding all the differences in national systems and national priorities, good governance was seen at the heart of that. The second reason that Goal 16 is so important is because of its broad nature. It focuses on peace, justice, strong institutions, inclusion across gender, across age groups, across disability status, or across ethnicity, across regionalism. It focuses on issues such as open government, transparency, and public participation. And so the understanding of what strategic audit is if there was the one line on that, as government is getting increasingly complex on how it responds to very difficult challenges in all of our societies, we in the audit world need to make sure that our audit techniques evolve in tandem with that complexity. Now, there's going to be some strangeness that goes on, in budget processes, and certainly as you referenced, we have some odd things going on in our country on this. I'm fortunately not one of the furloughed agencies, so I can be here, otherwise, I'd have to send regrets. But eventually we'll work it out, I guess. But the focus on the importance of strategic audit is being able to look in a cross-cutting way about big issues. When Dimitri first started talking about strategic audit a year or so ago, I'll admit I was one of the people that, and I'm a lifelong auditor, kind of scratched my head and said, well, audit is usually about looking backwards. Strategic is usually about looking forwards. So are we looking backwards in a forward-looking sense, or are we looking forward in a backward-looking sense? I'm still not really sure. But at any rate, that's all to be resolved later this year in Moscow. But the point is, again, is that we need to make sure how we do business in the audit world. If we're going to be valuable to decision makers, to citizens, to other stakeholders, we need to make sure we are as sophisticated in what we do as what government is doing to address the big issues that we confront in our societies. That's what strategic audit is to us.
Спасибо и вам желаю успеха.
Thank you indeed. And I wish you success in overcoming the current and maybe future conflicts in grappling with it successfully. And now I would like to pass the floor on to Mr. Junlun. China is a huge country, larger than Indonesia, larger than Russia, and it may be a very difficult job in trying to control and oversee such a huge country, especially since China is very strict about squandering public resources. Perhaps it takes a more stringent and stricter attitude than any of the countries represented here. Tell me, the model of strategic audit in China, is it different from other countries in question? Thank you.
And thanks to the Council Chamber of Russia, gave me this opportunity to share with you about the strategic audit, the practice in China. You just mentioned China is something different from my colleagues here, especially the strategic audit. I would like to share with you about how the National Audit Office or government audit serves to the strategic of the nation. First, I would like to give you the background of the nation's strategy. In the last 6-7 years, under the leadership of our President Xi Jinping, we have a new strategy of the whole nation. What's the new strategy? We have the 5 sphere big plan. It's integrated 5 issues like economic, political, cultural, social progress, as well as the ecological civilization. So the big target is not only we develop the economics, but we not only just economic development, we also have to develop the political, social progress, as well as the ecological civilization. That's the whole target. But how to achieve this target? We have 4 strategies. The 4 strategies include build a whole well-off of the society, make the whole country become very good country, and we have to develop our economy. It's opening and reforming. We have the special strategy of that. And rule by law, we have a strategy of that, as well as how to manage disciplinary the party, the Communist Party in China. We have these 4 strategies. This is the basic background of China. But government audit will conduct audit, but we have to think about this nation's strategy, how to fulfill our task of this nation. So we audit not only just economic issues, but also other issues. Even how to reconstruct, rebuild our National Audit Office, we have to link to that. Like regarding to the ecological civilization, we have a special department in National Audit Office. We have the audit department of the resources and the environment, something like that. So the national strategy is the guideline at the core of audit work. That's our basic background. The strategic audit is the basic responsibility of audit institutions. But how? We are government audit. Government audit, we audit the accountability of government. What's the accountability of government? Means the government, all the public bodies, they have to work on the nation's strategy. They have the accountability to work. We audit them. That is why we audit the strategic issues. In China, basically, we have 4 types of audit projects. The first one is we call real-time audit, or the implementation of policy. This is something new, just in last few years. Last 5 years, in China, we developed a new type of audit. It's real-time audit the implementation of the policy. It's strategic issues. And secondly, the accountability audit of leaders. We have almost 20 years experience to audit all the leaders, the head of the government like the governor of provinces, the mayor, the ministers. At least in one term, we audit their accountability. It's a special audit. We audit the senior leaders. We audit the strategic accountability, strategic responsibility of the leaders, because the high-level leaders, their responsibility is not only just compliance with law. It's not just like that. They have the responsibility to achieve the strategic goal. So when we audit the accountability of the leaders, we audit the strategic plan, strategic achievement of the leaders. And we also conduct a specific strategic audit. Let me give you one example. In China, in last 3-4 years, we have a special strategy of the nation. It's reduce the number of poor people. It's a national strategy. So to achieve this strategy goal, we have a special audit of these issues nationwide, from the central to the local. We audit these activities. It's a special strategic audit. And even in the normal audit, like the financial audit, we also focus on the strategic goal of the auditees. The most important thing is something new, is implementation of the policy. But how to audit the implementation of policy? This is a new audit practice in China. In last few years, we spend almost half of our audit resources on this audit. Because the central government, they have a strategy. Strategy is somewhere very high, but we have to do something in the ground. So from strategy goal to the ground, it's a long distance, especially the country big like China. It's a big country from the central to the local. It's a long distance. We have to audit. The central government has a strategy. What's the first step? It's policy. It's the policy. The ministries, they have responsibility to develop policies. That's the first step. We call it first kilometer. So we have to ask them to work. So we audit the ministries, the central ministries, by our outposted office, we call dispatched office in the ministries. The National Audit Office, we have a special bureau located in the ministries. They audit the ministries. To audit them, what's the actions taken by the ministry? That's the first step. The ministries, they have to make plans, take actions. That's the first step. And secondly, the local government, like provincial level, provincial or municipal government, they have to take actions. Who audit them? National Audit Office, we have regional audit offices. The regional audit offices of CNAO, they audit the provincial government, the local government, they have to take actions. Policy is not something just like document. If we have policy followed by action plan followed by programs or projects. Projects will be funded by budget. So we can see the money. So if we can see the money, we know how to audit. So the strategy, policy, program, projects is followed by money. That is why we can audit. But the implementation of the policy, the last step is to the ground, to the people's daily life. It's based on the individual projects. So we have to audit the projects. This kind of audit is audited by the local audit office. So it's a whole organizational structure of how to audit the strategy issues. It's by the audit the implementation of policies. That's the practice. And does it work? How the audit office work for that? And audit, we always have findings. Always have findings. We have findings, we give report to auditee. That's the first one. We issue audit reports. But audit reports give to auditee. The auditee, they have to follow your recommendations to do something. But it's not sufficient for some significant issues. Sometimes you have audit findings. The audit findings, it's not in the specific projects. It's something wrong with the policy. So you have to back to the top. So we produce special reports, special audit report to the State Council, report to the Central Committee of the party. That's a very important report. That's related to the policy issues. If you find the policy is not good, the policy is something not correct, you have to report to the top. That is a special report. And we also open the audit results to public. The citizen, the media, they can ask the auditee to take actions. It works. And we also transfer cases. Transfer means we transfer to somebody. If you find someone is guilty, we cannot do something. We transfer to the court or to the relevant organizations. And the last one is the implementation of audit recommendations. We give audit recommendations. If the auditee, they do nothing, what we can do? In China, we have regulations on that. By the end of the year, the State Council, they have to report to the People's Congress regarding this issue. All audit findings have been taken actions or not. The State Council, they have to report to the People's Congress. So normally, the auditee, they have to take actions on the audit recommendations, make our audit work more efficient, more effective. That's the practice in China. Through the implementation of policy, we service to the nation's strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And how many employees do you have in the National Control Revision Department of China? How many employees do you have in the Central Division?
In China, the National Audit Office, we have 3,800 audit staff. And in the headquarters, we have 500. And we have 600 located in the ministries.
In ministers?
Yes, in ministries. It's led by us. It's a staff of National Audit Office. But their offices located in the ministries, so they can follow the central ministries. And we also have 18 regional audit offices. We have more than 2,000 auditors, 2,600 auditors located in the region.
Я вижу, мистер Маника улыбается, да?
I see Mr. Manika smiling. It's not 140% like in Finland, no? Because in China, the auditing chamber, it's like an octopus, which covers all the spheres of life. Monica, I've got a question to you. Everybody has their own way. And I'm asking you, like a representative of an international organization which works with different countries, why are you sure that the audit has to change? Why?
Very much, and also thank you for having this opportunity to participate in this very high-level forum. And to your question, as representative of the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, as already mentioned by some of the speakers before, our world is becoming more complex, and so also the work of the Supreme Audit Institution has to follow this path. And this is why we have to develop and become much more broader in our audit work. As I think Dimitri and Chris explained it very well, what we understand under strategic audit. And we are also very grateful to the Chamber of Accounts of Russia of having taken out this issue for our coming Congress, which will so gracefully also be held here in Moscow, because we made a survey among all INTERSAI members on the themes we are going to discuss in Moscow in our Congress this year. And we found out that this is really a pressing problem, that Supreme Audit institutions know they have to change and to adapt their work to the changing environment. And this is why strategic audit is so important.
Спасибо. Я вот тут подготовила.
Thank you very much. I've got a question because you all are telling that you give recommendations to your governments. And the Supreme Audit Chambers, they have their unique vision of a budget cycle, of the accumulated knowledge about the activities led by the state. So the question is, even I've heard from some of you that we have to expand the long-term strategical horizons of the state. Well, I don't truly understand what is it, but as I understand, we have to look forward. That's what we spoke before. The question is, could you please right now, in brief, every one of you, give an advice? What does your country, what has the country to do to expand those strategic horizons as a state? Let's start with you, Dmitry. Thank you very much for this question. I think that our problems, which we will discuss in the INCASAI Congress is the language problem because state auditor is a professional, is an expert, and we speak complicated language, technically complicated, and it's a problem. And even responding such a simple question, I can answer like a state auditor or like I can explain you what do we want. One of the document which we have to sign at our Congress is the plain speaks about the plain language, which is a language which we have to speak as auditors. And after that, you will speak your normal language. Now, no. So I think I said that before that is the public administration issue, and the interactive surveys on forums shows that the public administration issue is a problem, and the strategic audit has to do with public administration. As our Chinese colleague said, we have to go to the financial issues, we have to control the use of monetary resources. So we are speaking about a set of approaches, and the public administration is something which is located at the end of this chain of investigation. So the public administration and its efficiency probably it's a too broad vision, because we can go deeper, we can speak about the interaction between ministries, about vertical interaction between different state structure, I mean national level, regional level, local level, but mainly the problem of public administration is the most complicated issue. So, okay, thank you. In Russia is the efficient public administration. As to Indonesia, what do you have to do in the first place right now? What would you recommend to the state, your advice to your state?
The government will develop its strategy. So we, as auditor, we study it, and then we develop our strategy, and then we focus the priority of the strategy. For example, now government of Indonesia will include SDGs as a part of their strategies. So we use SDGs for our focus.
Господин Маник.
Mr. Manika, in Finland, as I understand, the state management is totally okay because it's a small and democratic country. What is the main problem that you have there in Finland right now, and what would you advise to your government?
Thank you. It would be great if it would be really, perfect administration in Finland, but that's not the case. I mean, we have our problems also. I think our challenge will be that we have been promising a lot of positive and good things in our legislation to public in Finland. In the past, Finnish economy was growing fast and it was easy to promise good things. But now we are facing the situation that political power have to, let's say, take off those promises, provide less. And it's quite challenging situation that you have to pay more taxes and you get lower level of service. And that's a challenge that has to be solved. I must say that we don't consider that we are in the position that we can give, let's say, the right answers for the government. But we try to challenge government for transparent discussion how these challenges are solved. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Well, it confirms that the situation becomes more and more complicated, the public administration becomes more complicated, and the audit also. Mr. Awim, would you advise to United States government, to Donald Trump, as to the budget problems solution? Thank you.
You know, I wish I could say I didn't get your question, but the interpretation has been excellent, and so so thank you. I'm not sure which is the English booth, but thank you. A couple things in seriousness on this is that I think one of the problems that many of our countries face, the United States, faces, is our political system is a function of short-term thinking. And the election cycle of our House of Representatives, of our Senate, and even our president. Our Senate is 6-year terms. Our House of Representatives is 2-year terms. Our president is 4-year term with the opportunity of only one time for re-election. And so what that means is that it forces off the agenda, or let me put this in a positive way, is that it requires big long-term issues to force themselves on the agenda. And it gets very difficult for decision makers to make, and this is understandable, politically, to make very difficult decisions when the consequences of bad things or the benefits of taking action may accrue long after they've gone and they've moved on to other jobs. And that gets into one of the unique roles that we in the GAO have. The GAO, I don't work for the president. We're part of Congress. And so our job, or one of our jobs, is a foresight job, is to alert to the Congress, alert to the American people, not so much tell them things they don't know, but to make sure that we're focused on some of these big long-term issues and understanding that there are consequences and not dealing with them. And so, like Marco in Finland, we also have a long-term fiscal challenge. We have retirement of our baby boom generation, of which I'm one. These are the kids that were born after World War II into the 50s and in early 60s. We're all reaching retirement age. And so we have an aging population, we have rising healthcare costs, we have declining workers per retiree, which puts enormous pressure on our system. I mean, we have Marco showed the Finland debt to GDP ratio. Ours is about 77%, and it's going up. Within just the next few years, it'll be the highest it's ever been for us, which is right after World War II, is 104% debt to GDP, and it will surpass that just within a few years. Are we in an economic crisis because of that now? No. But there does eventually become a day of reckoning. At some point, we had a famous economist say that which cannot be sustained will stop at some point. And so if you're on an unsustainable fiscal path, it will stop. And so what our job is to alert the Congress and say, you need to put in place a fiscal plan, take action on this before things become catastrophic. I mean, climate change is obviously the existential issue on this that we're all dealing with as well. It's easy to have short-term thinking crowd out this longer thinking. Our job on the budget and on a whole host of other issues is to try and help force those big issues on the agenda and make sure that they're being thought of and that trade-offs are being made in the appropriate way by decision makers when they're making policy decisions.
Понятно. Ну, то есть более долгосрочный цель.
So, a longer term of making decision, and that's what important. And I'd like to tell you that you can make consultation with your Russian partners. They can give a lot of advices to the United States. They can tell you how to achieve a high budget deficit and low state debt. But it's a joke, sorry. Mr. J. Long, what is the main problem of China? And you've mentioned that one of the tasks is the reduction of poverty. One of the strategic goals is the reduction of poverty. The audit and chamber of China, does it influence in the solution of this poverty problem in any way?
The Chinese government has a plan to eliminate the poor people, the poverty in the nationwide, almost eliminated by the end of year 2020. So, according to this strategy, we almost achieved the goal. In the last few years, last 3 or 5 years, Chinese government take a lot of actions, spend a lot of money, put money into these issues, and we have a very detailed target for the individual people. We have to, the first step is clearly identify who is the poor people, poor people, name by name, very clearly by the standard. We have a national standards. That's the first step. Make sure who is the poor person. And secondly, from the central government to provincial, county, each government, they have to take actions to reduce the poverty. And we have a lot of programs. We spend money to develop industries for people, let them to work. We develop an education program. We develop a lot of programs on that. And we also sent a lot of people, a lot of staff to the villages to help them. It's funded by the government. So in this process, the National Audit Office and the local audit offices, we audit all the activities. We audit all the money be used in this program. We audit not only the money issues, we audit the implementation of the policy. We audit the detailed activities should be done correctly. And we believe we audit what? Audit always compare what should be and what should be done by the government and what has been done by the government. We always compare. So no matter it's money issues or other issues, we can audit that. So after a few years, I think the achievement is quite good. We believe by the end of the year 2020, we will almost eliminate the poverty in China.
Кстати, я верю, потому что я вот работаю рядом с...
Oh, by the way, I believe that, because I work next to Red Square, and I can see Chinese tourists coming in droves. I have never seen so many Chinese tourists in Moscow, in Red Square. I went to Italy for Christmas holidays, and I saw so many Chinese crowds of Chinese tourists at Gucci stores in Italy. And I can see that they're getting increasingly prosperous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentations. Of course, 90 minutes is nothing to identify solutions to all outstanding issues. And especially thinking about the scope of reform underway in many countries, I realize that mass media are not very keen on these issues, not yet. Perhaps people are kind of raking their brain, and even auditing chambers are not always in a position to give very simple and clear answers as to their current workings, to what they're doing. So I would venture to contribute to the overall understanding and definition of strategic audit. Here it goes. If I put it in very simple terms, strategic audit is not looking for what's been stolen. It's not looking for money missing. This is something which helps prevent theft in the future or squandering of resources. What do you think? What do you think of that? Dmitry. That should be a slogan for theme 2 of Intersci Congress. So very clear, yes. Thank you all. Thank you, Russian Auditing Chamber. It's a shame Alexei Kudin didn't make it. Thank you, dear audience. Thank you, panelists.